Test, test. Hey, Karen.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Good. Ooh, you're loud. Turn my
And you're
volume down.
quiet.
Oh, am I?
I had turned my speaker down yesterday for another reason. Well, how's your dad? Things
Oh,
going okay?
he's doing great. Yeah.
Good.
I was telling my I think I spent more time with my dad in the last week than I have in the last 20 years. It's
Isn't that how it goes? Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Well, I hope you can't see my t-shirt too well. I'm wearing my Thomson Reuters t-shirt from the conference because I rode my bike in and got running a little late. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's
haven't had time
oh,
to change into my work
that's
clothes.
awesome. Yeah, no, yeah, I should have a bike helmet on still. That's
That's
perfect.
right. Yeah. I don't know if you can still see the mark that it leaves. Fluff my hair.
Oh, you're so good. Record as well. That's to be sure. Are you recovered?
No, not really. Kind of, a little bit.
Yeah,
It's always so go, go, go.
yeah.
Um, and I moderated a panel and I spoke on a different panel, and I am now the chair of the government law library section of
Oh,
the
really?
American
Wow,
Association of Law
congratulations.
Libraries. So I just had all these
Yeah,
kind of obligations that made it seem more tiring, I think, than I realized it would,
and a normal attendee type
Right.
experience, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We can slow roll into our opening. Thanks, Karen. I biking in after AALL. You're awesome. Thank you for for joining me. This is the Great Paper Pod. I'm Mike Carlson with Great Paper Legal.
I'm Karen Westwood, director of the Hennepin County Law Library.
Karen's going to regale us with, and I did invite some of our colleagues who I believe were there as well. I don't know if Mike and Andrew also attended. I believe they were there, and you probably ran into them. But
Yep.
may see some folks drop in a minute here as well. Everyone's welcome. But we're going to recap AALL this afternoon. It's interesting, Karen. Usually what I'll do is I'll just jump on TweetDeck, which and just run the hashtag for AALL and watch what's been announced and what's going on. I had nothing like that this year, so I really felt out of the loop being in Minneapolis, not attending the event.
Yeah.
And some folks were jumping in on the new platform Threads, but I didn't really have a way to sort of participate from afar this year, so I really missed it.
So tell me about that. I'm old, as we've established. I don't do that. So did they not have a Twitter feed this year that people were employing, or was it just not interesting?
It was just not, yeah. I didn't feel like I was getting enough information there that I usually do, and TweetDeck, I believe, is a different thing now. And I just fewer people are using Twitter as a
Right.
tool, and it's not a pleasant place to be. So, so I try to track it on Threads, which is kind of an interesting platform, but not searchable and doesn't have a desktop application. So
Oh, sure.
I just
Yep.
check on my phone, and just kind of Googling around and looking for the big announcements and things like that. And so I'm super excited to hear what you have to say about your experience there, because as I say, I feel like I was far away from it this time.
Yeah, in preparation for this morning, I did poke around a little bit to see if there were any conference reviews up yet. Bob Ambrosi usually does one,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen that yet. Jean O'Grady usually does something, and I didn't see anything post-conference from her. Sabrina Pacifici, another law librarian blogger, also didn't see. But it just might be that the conference didn't end until Tuesday afternoon, and people need a day or two to like sort through their stuff and their notes, and we'll see if anything comes up next week. But Mike, you were featured at AALL.
yeah, I heard that.
On the poster in the exhibit hall, I had a couple of people say, awesome. Hey, I'm going to sign up and take a look. So
that's great. I think Sarah Glassmeyer did if I'm pronouncing her name, it's funny. I say it out loud for the first time, just because I've been reading her forever. I've never met her personally, but she did a quick rundown as well.
Oh, did she? Good.
Yeah.
I didn't think to look for hers, but yeah.
It was interesting. She said too that she wasn't going to live tweet the event, and she wanted to be present for the conference, and instead was going to do an old-fashioned blog post about the event, and did a little rundown of that. It was interesting. It was general, but I think things are a little different these days, but I didn't see a big announcement from any of the platforms, from the legal research platforms or anywhere else.
No, I don't recall any big announcements. So of course the Thomson Reuters case text, buy purchase had been announced earlier. Yeah. I wondered then if case text would continue to have a separate booth, and they did. It was right across the aisle from the Thomson Reuters.
Oh, did they?
But they didn't talk about it. It was interesting. Like if you wanted to look at the generative AI, you went to, the case text booth, and they demonstrated. And I think it happened so close to the conference, it was a little late to retool anything.
But they couldn't have been they couldn't have been next to each other by accident, I can't imagine.
No. I mean, I don't know how early they set that up, but I'm sure they pulled whatever strings they had to get them right next to each other. I would say the overall tech theme of the conference was, as you would expect, this generative AI and how different vendors are planning to employ it. So I was able at is it called CoCounsel, the AI product that case text has?
Yep.
So I had them run through my little search about is a private college a landlord under Minnesota law for purposes of dorm living, because I don't think there's a direct case on that. And indeed, CoCounsel did a fine job with it. It generated a little memo, said there's no direct case law on this, but there is this case that treats, a private college as a sort of regular entity for some form of tax purpose. And here's another case that treats a private college, in this way for zoning. So one might be able to make the argument that they're a landlord. This is not, I thought was not a bad result, except when I was talking with a local housing law expert, because this problem has been in my mind for weeks. And I asked him the question, he just said, well, they're a landlord under the Minnesota statute. The statute is very clear about who a landlord is. Many, many entities who don't think they are landlords are landlords. And all you have to do is look through like the elements in the statute. So I thought it did a good job on the case law, but it didn't really address the landlord question.
And is it working against the statutory language?
I don't know. So it wasn't until I got back. I thought it would be interesting, Mike, maybe you and I have a little project there we could do and write up a short little note for Bench and Bar magazine or something.
That's a good idea.
Because it's interesting to think, like, what's it looking at? What's it trying to do? Right? Because the statute doesn't say. Also, an example of who is a landlord is a private college, of this, of that. And so it's got to be hard for any intelligence, human or artificial, to get a handle on what exactly that means. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And I know, I've used ChatGPT just goofing around to search statutes, like, statute limitations, and it's delivered with proper citation, even not just outside of CoCounsel even. It seems to work pretty well. Did you review the statute? I mean, it seems I get a little bit surprised that it's that cut and dried, but
Oh, I don't think it is that cut and dry. I think
yeah,
if you're a housing expert and you come from a certain point of view, it is cut and dry. But
yeah, okay.
we, of course, when we had the question, we started with the statute, and then we're like, man, who knows?
I see.
And
Yeah.
that's
Well,
all we were
that
looking for.
makes sense. That
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, and that's one of the things you get stuck with, and why. And one of the things you don't think about it, we make fun of the sad attorney who made up the cases, but
Right.
we're all guilty of the same thing of using the tool, not thinking about what it's searching in the background, and then
Right.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
what does the statute even say, right? And
Yeah, exactly. It's really super, super interesting. Lexis AI was demonstrating, or Lexis was demonstrating their new
yeah.
AI project
Did you try it
product.
there? Did you do a little A/B testing?
I tried to, because I was all in, but they
Yeah.
wouldn't do it. They said
Oh.
the system was still in training or learning. They used some phrase that amused me, and now I can't
Oh
remember
my
what it
God.
was. So they had
Yeah.
some canned queries that they were demonstrating. They said they hope to roll their product out in September for law firms. This is usually the order it goes. Law firms, and then after that,
Yeah, that's right. That's
academic.
right.
And eventually, when
I forgot. Yeah.
public law libraries keep knocking on the door, they'll remember us. So,
Yeah.
but that's okay. It's good for us to know what's coming, and then to watch how it rolls out in these other
Yeah.
venues, and kind of hear how people are using it and how they like it. So those are the two big things. Apparently, it was the 150th anniversary of something related to shepherds. So Lexus had
Yeah.
a champagne toast one afternoon. But the bartenders didn't know what they were celebrating. I'm like, what's the toast for? And they said, I don't know, life. I said, I don't think Lexus is just toasting life. Then later on, someone was talking about, I don't know if it was
150th.
Frank Shepard's birth or the first citator or what, but something.
I caught that on LinkedIn or somewhere. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's
Yeah.
fun. That's a
That's
a
fun one.
librarian thing to do.
Yep, exactly. No one else would be that interested.
Yeah. What were the highlights for you?
Well, I tell you, yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
all interested in citators and
yeah.
trying to figure out like definitive information. So I went to a couple of sessions that I thought were pretty good. One was one coordinated and moderated by Susan Nevelo Mart. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know Susan,
Not
but
personally, but yeah.
she's written these like seminal articles. A few years ago, she wrote an article called "Every Algorithm Has a Point of View," and she's had her law students,
Yeah.
run all these experiments with the same search across different products, which resulted in all these different results. And so now she's published an article called "Hunting and Gathering on the Information Savannah." And I think I glanced through the article a while ago. I no longer could tell you what the thesis was, but she had bigwigs from Bloomberg, Lexis, Thomson Reuters, and VLEX now,
Mhm.
Ed Walters from what we used to call Fastcase. And that's just great whenever you get all those folks in a room, just to hear what they're thinking about, how they're proceeding. So that was really interesting. And of course, the theme that runs through is everyone comes up with different results. There's no definitive answer to most things that you have to research. You already know about
Yeah.
Chevron,
Yeah.
so you don't have to research that case. It's when
Yeah,
you
right,
get into more
right.
details that. So that was interesting. Ed Walters was telling a story about how this, natural language processing was pretty good, and now moving into, this generative large language model AI. And he was talking with his 15-year-old son and was saying, the gold standard for many, many years was Boolean searching, because it was super clear, super understandable. And you could do this. You could have a topic within 15 words of this other topic, and that would bring these results up. And he said, my 15-year-old said, that's the gold standard? Like, what if that word was 16 words away? It just doesn't retrieve it. And it's like, well, yeah. This kid's like, yeah, there's a long way to go. And then there's another session on citators and how subjective citators are. And it was really
That's
delivered from
interesting. Yeah.
academic law librarian perspective, like how do they teach students that, well, first to actually read the cases that they have
Yeah.
used a citator to locate, but also how to really demonstrate to them that citators also kind of have a point of view, and you are not gonna get the same results, you know, across services. And of course, you know, I wrote that article or co-wrote an article a few years
Yeah.
ago on this topic. And I think it just sort of bears out our conclusion, which is your citator cannot be your only source. You have to be looking at opposing counsel, you know, the cases they're citing and secondary sources and so forth. But so that was interesting.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Citator as a non-objective tool is interesting. I mean, I often think of that strictly as in technical terms, right? It either cites or it doesn't cite. If it doesn't cite, that doesn't mean that there's no other relevant material out there, but it either cites or it doesn't cite.
Right.
But you know, and the flags are just flags. I mean,
Right.
you know, it's funny though. I mean, even the experienced attorneys that I work with will often look at a red flag or you know, mark and say, wait a minute. And
Yeah.
I'll have to say, well, not for that purpose. Well, just very recently I had to say
Yep.
overruled on other grounds. You know, and
Yeah.
my blue book is not, you know, up to speed probably. So my memo probably should have said, yes, I understand it's got a red flag on it, but I'm
Right.
citing it for some other purpose, right?
Yeah. And so, you know, Westlaw now has the striped red flag, which is to try to really
Yeah,
reinforce for folks that the whole shebang isn't kind of done with, that it's, you know, there's negative treatment on one or more grounds, but not everything. I think to try to reinforce that you can still cite it. Everyone uses Korematsu as this great example of how the citator,
yeah,
you know, all these citators treat it differently because it's a kind of a wacky case. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Justin Samard was on and on here with us, and
Right.
then you did a CLE with him, which was really great. All of those slavery cases are, you know, still good law, you know,
Right.
and
Right. Yep.
would you ever cite them? Yeah,
Right.
Westlaw's got lots of citation flags now. It's starting to look more like some of the other. You used to just to be a red flag
Yeah.
or a yellow flag, so either
Yep.
negative or adverse. But now you've got overruling risk. You've got for federal. I think it's a little bit confusing actually for the regular user. You know, the blue and white striped flag, which
Yeah.
is cool because you can see it's up on appeal,
Right.
but it's only available for federal decisions. That's not something, you know, you just have to keep in mind as you're doing
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It was interesting. There was a man there who'd written an article called Yellow Flag Fever, maybe
Oh
came
yeah,
out in
yeah,
the mid-teens. And he said they took this body of cases and ran them through different citators, and they found like 57 different possible treatments that would receive a yellow flag, you
yeah,
know, under the key site. Under Shepard's, they didn't catch these different nuances as much, but there wasn't as much confusion about what their kind of
right,
intermediate
yeah.
signaling actually meant. So so I enjoyed that. I would say there were a lot of programs around DEI issues,
Oh, great.
you know, diversity issues. And I think that's really important. And I was thinking about that on my way in this morning in relation to kind of the uncertainty around things that we think are a little more certain in legal research, like citators, and that um, these diversity issues too offer us a lot of different insight and nuance into how we interpret information, right? We're all interpreting from this historical line of reasoning that's very Western and very white and European, and just to be cognizant that we perceive information in a particular way, I think is helpful for us to keep in mind.
yeah, we be curious to know more about that. We talked previously at other events about the bias in taxonomy systems. So
Right.
the Library of Congress and
Yep.
which are just perennial issues. I haven't
Yep.
actually thought about it in terms of like key number system, whether or not
I
but
think
what
there's
did
some
how
of
did
that
they
there. Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah
For
how did
sure.
they what were the
Yeah.
topics of the DEI events were
Well, I mean, a lot, like whose story is missing? How law libraries can adapt collection development policies for DEI.
I see. So
Uh,
more about resources than tools, typically.
right. There's something, I'm not sure if this was so DEI, but definitely access to justice, the impact of generative AI for access to justice. And I don't know. There was a session on the next gen bar exam, which I was sorry to miss.
Oh, was
I
there?
think that's an interesting.
Yeah. I recently looked at the questions on the next jet. It just, I have feelings about that. But
Yeah.
what was the tone of the what were I'd love to know what the librarians think about the next gen
About the
bar exam.
next gen bar exam,
Yeah.
I didn't go to that one, so
Darn.
I don't know. I'll have to ask.
Yeah.
Ask someone who went. A lot of these are recorded for law librarian members, so I'll go back and
Yeah.
catch
Yeah.
some of the
Let me go grab
recordings.
that one
Yeah,
too. Yeah, have you taken a look at any of the questions on the next gen bar exam? They
I
published the sample
did.
questions and
Right, they published sample questions because I think one, like on one of the sample questions, the multiple choice answers were which would be the best terms to use when researching this question.
yes,
Did you
yes.
notice that? And I thought
Yeah, well, legal
that's kind of
research is a
cool.
part of the new next
Yeah.
gen bar exam. Yeah.
I thought, well, that's kind of cool. It's also sort of like issue spotting by another name.
Yeah.
I don't know that it
Well,
was as transformative as
I
it
know, I
seemed.
know. Well, the questions generally seem like that's where they're directed towards legal research as being something that inevitably any attorney is going to do. The
Right.
question is, what are the two? It was all issue spotting. You didn't have
Yeah.
to recite the rule. It's what are the two answers or what are the two issues you're likely to have to research as a result of this
Yeah.
scenario, and you pick the two and you get partial credit, which I think is kind of cool. But I'm not sure this does anything to help demonstrate the competency of the attorney. I'm not.
Well,
I
no, and
don't
I
know.
mean, it's just sort of one step away, right? Because if you remember the rule wrong, you're going to choose the wrong search term
Yeah,
to start with. So it's just you still have
yeah,
to know what the rule is to my mind. And also
yeah,
as a researcher, sometimes you do choose an ill-suited term. And hopefully
yeah,
after a search or two, you realize, oh, wait a minute, that's not that's not what I mean. And you go back
yeah,
and try again. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear. I don't have all of the themes or understanding of kind of what's trying to be accomplished. I'm skeptical of the bar exam or any bar exam being able to demonstrate the competency, especially when you consider everything that an
Wow.
attorney needs to do now in order to
Yeah.
deliver legal services. I don't know that kind of bar exam is, the fact that it's easier doesn't bother me at all for that
Yeah.
reason. I mean, why not deliver that to a second year law student, a rising 2L, just take the bar exam and then finish school and get your diploma.
Right.
I seems just like as logical to me as requiring barbary, but there are a lot of interests in
Yeah. I mean, I've probably read too much of Joe Patrice on Above the Law,
yeah, yeah,
because he really does not love that as a measure of your knowledge.
yeah, yeah, I
I
know
do kind of
he's
feel like there has to be some sort of benchmarking, but maybe you just have to, offer better exams in law school.
yeah,
Because I remember my law school classmates saying, "Oh my gosh, the Barbary is what's teaching me what I'm going to need to know in practice much more. These actual, what is torts, boom, 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 rather than in law school, thinking like a lawyer and deep philosophical conversations about whatever, the direction of the law. So
Yeah.
they did, I remember thinking that too. Oh yeah, okay, here we're hitting the high points and the important points on all these topics. I don't know if that makes you practice better or not, but it makes me wonder about exactly what we're teaching in law schools as well.
I know. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is that the bar exam is like trying to fix too much.
Yeah,
I,
maybe. Yeah.
I think, yeah, there's you can't just put a new paint job on the Titanic and then expect it
Right.
not to hit an iceberg. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was Joe Patrice who I'll try to drop that into the show notes too. I think it was arguing for on above the law, the diploma should be
Right.
the
That should be your
qualifying.
credential.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. Look, many professions do those exams, right? The board exams for medical doctors and
Yeah.
CPA exams and so forth. So it'd be interesting. I'm sure people have looked into what other professions are doing with regard to that.
And I think it's worthwhile being able to demonstrate some technical expertise.
Right.
There are some technical aspects, civil procedure, for example,
Right.
I think, is not necessarily is something that you could do in a more formal exam type situation, and which isn't just, it is memorization, but that's what you do in medical school too, right?
Well,
Your anatomy
exactly.
classes. Yeah.
And you have to recall enough to know there is a rule.
Yeah.
But you might
Right.
not remember exactly the wording, but you're like, hey, isn't there a, rule 12B something, something that I should look
Yeah.
up?
Right.
And then Yeah.
Did you how was the vibe generally? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I was gonna respond to that. It was fun. And when we were in Denver last year, it was the first time the conference had been held in person, in 3 years because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
2021, well, 2 years, I guess, the third year. So people were just so thrilled to be together, but there were people who didn't show, speakers who couldn't make it because someone in their family had COVID. People were still wearing masks for the most part indoors. So there was this like kind of joy, but caution. And this year felt very much like a regular conference. People were
Yeah.
super happy to see each other, complained about this or that thing, because nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so it just had much more of a grounded feeling. We had at the government law libraries morning meeting, the president of the Boston Public Library came and spoke. And so that was fun to hear about, a large public library director's, feelings about how things are going, what they're doing around book bans. And they haven't had any book banning requests at Boston Public, but they've had protesters around some of their programming. And so that was really interesting.
Interesting.
And then the Boston Social Law Library, the second oldest law library in the United States after Jenkins in Philadelphia, they hosted a little reception for government law libraries in the John Adams Courthouse building. So this beautiful old building with this huge marble staircase, and then this like venerable old law library space, with the wooden bookshelves and the old reporters. And it was lovely. I mentioned those two of those in conjunction because at the breakfast I was chatting with this president of BPL and was telling him we were going to be going over to the Boston Social Law Library later in the conference. And he said, I haven't heard of that. What is that? And I was like, dude, it's a big deal in law library world.
Yeah. I'm not familiar. What is the social law? What is social law library?
I know they were the current head was talking about how people always ask that. I think because a lot of these places started out as a way to sort of network. So it's kind of like an older term for association, that it was like a society.
It's
sort
it's
of.
a cafe. It's the third space. It's
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
Boston, so we're
yeah,
talking, the Enlightenment era
right.
ideals. Yeah.
So the current director was saying they had a very long-term director, Edgar Belafontaine, and he said, so social has that really its literal meaning of being like a society of
Yeah.
people of the same profession gathering together. He said, but Edgar did like to emphasize the social part of social law libraries. So he left a bequest to the library, and he said, that's what we're using to fund this party.
So, and so social would be like the opposite of a private library, which
Well,
was
I'm not sure though. I mean, I think it maybe is not an individual library. The social was like this cooperative library, because social law library, like Hennepin County Law Library, is a subscription library in there. And so people become members to have full membership privileges. So that's why
yeah.
it seems a little like a society to me.
Gotcha.
I have to go back and reread that. I don't remember all the details from the little speech. My feet were hurting by then.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and there was a vendor reception at the Boston Public Library, which always is great, but as librarians, we're always disappointed because they never allow you into the collection. They just have
Yeah.
these party rooms where they serve food
Yeah.
and drinks, so they're not going to let you wander into their rare books. But it was nice. It's just, a beautiful old building there on Copley Square. So
Yeah.
that was nice. And yep, it was a really enjoyable meeting, full of a lot of, I think, important ideas. And a lot of people. I was kind of surprised because the cost to attend now is up another $100. I think it's $6.99 for registration for a meeting that goes from the opening receptions Saturday evening until noon on Tuesday. So it isn't a real long meeting anymore. And then, of course, hotel costs are high, and food, everything post-COVID costs
Yeah.
more. So I thought some libraries wouldn't send folks, but there were a lot of people there. So that was good.
Yeah. So the numbers were
Yep,
comparable
numbers were right up
pre-COVID.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is you're now the president?
Yes. I am the chair of
Head,
the
head person,
GOL
chair
SAS. Yeah.
of the government. Tell me about that.
Government law
do you-
libraries, SAS. So that's court libraries, county law libraries, state law libraries, agency law libraries. There are federal agencies that have law libraries. And so we all get together because, of course, we have common interests, common challenges, and so forth. I haven't really decided what my big project for the
Your
year will be.
initiative is, yeah.
Yeah, no big
What your
initiative.
legacy is going to look like, and yeah.
My legacy is usually, keep the boat afloat.
Yeah, that's right.
But we'll see. It's a really interesting time. I think I'm really interested in this issue of county law library funding, which is maybe getting a little into the weeds for our audience. But many county law libraries are funded by court filing fees, which seems like a regressive way to fund a public service to me. It's especially when we can see data about who gets tickets and who doesn't bother to argue the tickets. It's kind of the least of us in our society. And I don't really like running a program on the backs of folks who can least afford it.
Yeah, wow, that does feel.
You know what I mean? So, but there's civil filing fees, but people without a lot of money are in civil court too, right? Family law and probate.
Oh yeah.
And we don't get a lot. We get $12 on civil fees. In Hennepin, we only take $3 on criminal fees because no one on our board is interested in raising those.
Yeah.
But it sits a little funny. And I think as more and more entities look at equity and in how they operate, that method of funding is going to continue to come under scrutiny. And it would be great if we could get out ahead of it somehow. So nothing like me to choose an intractable problem and try to address it.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a well, I don't know, funding. What about other agencies? Do you know, maybe are other government libraries funded in similar ways with like filing fees, like
Well, yeah, I don't know. So the state law libraries tend to be funded by their legislature, and they tend to be
mhm.
part of a judicial branch appropriation, which is not a winning formula either, because the judiciary always feels like they get shortchanged by the
Yeah,
legislature.
yeah,
So they never feel flush in cash. But I do know that there are additional filing fees when you're in court, especially I think if you're in criminal court, there's like a $75 fee for this and a $150 fee for that. And those, I don't, I don't know. I should examine exactly where they go.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't, I can't remember.
There's
They
another
might go to the
paper.
judiciary. Yeah. But, other departments in the county make their pitch to the county board every year to get funding. So the thought is maybe law libraries should do that too, but then you have to spend your time doing that instead of serving your patrons. So,
Yeah,
but it would be
very.
good for us to remember to retell our story, right? If we're not up in front of uh, decision makers talking about ourselves, then people don't know about us. And so the president of Boston Public Library doesn't know about the social law library.
Yeah, that's right. And they're local. Well, and that's why we have an association, right?
Right.
That kind of advocacy is kind of what you expect from an
That's right.
industry
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, interesting stuff. Mike, did you have I see we're at 8:30. Did you have any interesting questions this week?
I did, the most interesting, I've been doing a lot of document automation this week. There were a couple of interesting ones. I was working on a surrogacy agreement, which is interesting. And
Yeah.
gestational agreements are not permitted in every state, apparently. I was working through this document and said one of the clauses was you shall not travel to Tennessee to all of these states. What is that about? So I had to jump in
Ah,
and yeah, because some states it's illegal, and I don't, what is that? I did not do the legal research, but I thought this is probably as an add-on, just benefit to the service, just a quick little 50 state survey on surrogacy laws in the United States, which would outline the risks associated with traveling to that state. Because that was my question. Well, what happens? We're restricting travel, which is a national issue right now.
right.
And, that was super interesting. The other interesting piece of news, which I've been trying to catch up to, and maybe we'll save this for another program, but the plain language ISO standard. Have you seen this?
Oh, I have not.
I've been not following it very closely, and I just wanted to get up to speed, and just the International Standards Organization has you can now buy for about $106 the plain language ISO standard.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So yeah, so I'd be interested. I'm not gonna pay for it, but I'll figure something out
Yeah.
where we could see. I just curious to know a little bit about that. Just my colleagues who are doing plain English for lawyers type things were talking about it, and so I've been trying to catch up to speed with that and find out what that's about.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So this week, Mike, I don't have anything I'm looking for in particular for next week, but today we have a CLE, a virtual CLE at 12:15 Central Time, and it is called Righting the Wrongs Through Posthumous Pardons, Max Mason, the Duluth Lynchings and Lessons for the Future, presented by Corey Gordon of counsel at Norton Rose Fulbright. And he, along with Jerry Blackwell, got this posthumous pardon back, I think in summer of 2020. At the first one that Minnesota had granted. And so I think it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Posthumous means the time for justice has passed typically.
Right,
So I'd be
right,
very interested. Yeah, that sounds like fun. That's
right.
at what
Yep,
time?
that's at 12:15 Central.
12:15
Yep,
via.
and the link is on our law library website,
Okay, very cool.
hclawlib.org.
Excellent.
But you all know how to Google Hennepin County Law Library,
Yeah,
so
but I know how to find you.
that's right. What are you
Now,
looking forward to this week, Mike?
I've got a CLE myself to get ready for August 3rd. So I've got a little bit of time on that yet, but I used to have this slide in my legal research CLEs on the 3 eras of legal research, which walk through, the era of print, or
Mhm.
predating printing, actually, the era of search, our Google world, and the era of find or get, which is uh, inspired, not well, the result of social media, essentially, and talking about ChatGPT. And while I was never really clear about whether or not this breakdown of legal research and the way we think about how we access legal materials was very defensible, but it's the way that I think about things, and so
Sure.
I'm going to toss it out there for feedback and comment, and we'll see how that goes on August 3rd. So yeah, I'm excited to put that together and
Yeah.
present it next week that's at the Bar Association.
Oh, at the Bar Association. Great. Yep.
I'll be right here in my office, so it's
Yeah.
virtual Zoom, but I'll be for the MSBA, so looking forward to that.
Oh, that's super.
Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
You coming in on your bike right after AALL.
At least it's not too hot. The weather cooled off a bit, so it's
Next
good.
week, be careful, please.
I
It's gonna
know.
be super hot.
I might be back on the train next week. We'll see.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care, Karen.
Take care. Have a good
Thanks
week,
a lot.
everyone.